Good morning, everyone. We'll give it another minute here. You folks are a little early, so 10:59, and we'll kick it off at 11. And it is 11. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another PIA virtual coffee break. We are so excited to be here today to discuss turning AI in uncertainty into opportunity. So we've got an esteemed panel, and I will mention, if you are not currently on mute, could you please mute your audio unless you are speaking, and we'll try to keep everything kind of quiet and focus on the speakers. So we've got an esteemed panel today full of PIA executives and board members, including Vonda Copeland, Mark Surt, and Shah Briones. We're so excited to have them doing this panel for us in a virtual format. They did do this last month in Florida live, so we're excited to have it in a virtual format, bringing it straight to you all wherever you may be. We do want to mention we like to keep these sessions conversational and casual. So if you have any comments, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat. Raise your hand, chime in. We'll try to open it up for everybody. And we like to just really keep it casual. I do want to mention we are recording today's session. So if you have any staff or team members that weren't able to attend the event and would like to see this session, we'll be sharing that. So feel free to circulate that with your staff.
Awesome. Okay.
And we have these virtual coffee breaks every month. So do stay tuned for a full calendar of those. Next month will be life and health. We'll have a special guest, so stay tuned for that. And with that, I would love to introduce our moderator, Claire DeNicola, who works closely with the PIA Partnership, and the PIA Tech Council. Claire will be moderating our event, and with that, I will turn it over to Claire. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Madeline. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire DeNicola, and I've worked with PIA for a number of years. I worked with all the folks on this panel, so we're eager to get into the discussion. I've been in the insurance industry a long time. I was never an agent, but I was with a company called Ivans. I was CEO of that organization before starting my own consulting business, which is where I am now. So if you did not intend to attend our coffee break, which is turning AI uncertainty into opportunity, now's your chance to move on, but we're going to have a great talk today. The whole idea, you see a lot of stuff about AI out there, right? And a lot of it is high level. AI is going to be so great. Here's what it's going to do. But not all the articles, not all the sessions really get down to brass tacks. What does it mean for an agency? What does it mean within the office? And how do you really, people say, oh, it's good, but everybody's a little uncertain about it. Some of it's a little scary, frankly. So this group today, we're going to do a lot of questions, but we're going to talk seriously about what are some of the pros and how do you make it work? But what are some of the cons agents need to be thinking about now? As Madeline said, we like to make these sessions interactive. So we're going to ask you to do one of two things. We love if you turn your cameras on. These are very casual. If you've been to a PIA coffee break, you know that they're super casual. Everything goes. So you can turn your camera on. We love to have that. Just as Madeline said, make sure you're on mute so we're not getting the background noise while we're having the discussion. Feel free, but we also understand a lot of people multitask. So if you want to have your camera on, attention to some of the discussion, that's fine too. Just jump in when you can. You have two ways you can do your questions. You can put them right in the chat and we will get to them. Or you can sort of raise your hand and tell us you want to give us a question live and we'll call on you. We do have a fairly large number of people in this coffee break, so we'll manage it as best we can and we'll keep it moving. All right, I think that's all I have to say on this. So I'm going to do one quick thing. PIA has a program, which this is just a little plug to go to this program, Thinking Bigger. This is the address. You can get there anytime. And these are TED Talk style videos on new ideas. AI is one of them. So we do tackle AI in this program. So if you haven't been to check out this PIA partnership program, please do so. Now we turn to our panel. So let's have an introduction from each of our panelists. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your agency, maybe where you are, and then we'll move into the questions. So Shah, we'll start with you.
Yeah, my name's Shah Briones. I work for A Insurance. We're a PCF partner. Our agency is in northern Utah. I've got an office in Syracuse and then one in Kaysville as well. I'm coming up on my 20 years in insurance, and I think many of us kind of fell into insurance accidentally. That's typically the case, as was the case for me. And I would say I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. So I love technology. I love all that is about insurance and policies and those types of things. So I'm Shah from A Insurance in Utah.
Great. Thank you, Shah. Vonda.
I'm Vonda Copeland, and my husband and I have Copeland Insurance Agency in Kansas. We have 9 locations headquartered in Manhattan, Kansas. And I actually, when we were in Florida a few weeks ago, Shah introduced himself as a tech nerd, and I told him, no wonder we get along so well, because I love technology as well. And so I am not afraid of it. And I think that's probably the big thing is the less fear you have of it, the more you can play with it and learn with it.
Thank you, Vonda. And Mark.
Hey, I'm Mark Seward from. Hey, yeah. So I'm Mark Seward from Seward, Nebraska. I'm with a legacy agency, which means simply that I am a second generation. I'm now the third agency generation in the family here as well. But we're excited here today to be able to present you some ideas we have. My background is, my friends call me actually the gadget man. So I was the guy that probably had the first clapper ever, knows what that is. But I love technology, but technology does kind of sometimes hurt me. Sometimes you're on the cutting edge or bleeding edge, and sometimes I think I'm more on the bleeding edge. So I'm excited about AI going forward. So, and by the way, Nebraska, just so you know it, I just saw a poll from, or not a poll, but actually some notes from AM Best. Nebraska is the worst state to buy insurance in. So just so you know.
We've got that claim to fame too, and the buyer of the first clapper. That's great. Okay, so let's take the screen off and let's have all those faces. So let's start with a really basic question. And Vonda, we'll go to you first. What does you hear about artificial intelligence, you hear about AI, what does it mean to you?
Well, I have to kind of laugh at this because I grew up on a cattle ranch, on a dairy farm, and I have we also have a cattle ranch. So AI this time of year does not necessarily mean the same thing that I'm talking about today. But for artificial intelligence, to me, when I think about it, I seriously am starting to look at it as a personal assistant. What it can do to aid in productivity, what it can do to speed up some processes. But that's how I look at it, as an assistant, as a tool that we can harness, that we now have the ability to harness directly.
Mm-hmm. Mark, how about you?
Well, this helps with the thought process. So you have so many things you think about or need to talk to about. So I use that as an assistant as well. So whether I use the GPT chat to kind of throw an idea out there, kind of replaces my dictionary, my thesaurus for ideas to come forward, and how we incorporate agents, it's going to bring a lot of opportunity to everybody to use it some fashion.
Mm-hmm. All right, Shah, you're a technology nerd. How do you think of AI?
Well, I think we think of the Chat GPT, we think of some of these crazy photo editing pieces, but I think it's a little bit more than that. If we look at maybe with the starts of some of this AI, we look at analyzing data. And I think in our world today, especially in the marketing world with insurance, it's a good place to start, like Mark said, to gather some ideas and to put some of that stuff, in front of you. So.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of you mentioned ChatGPT, and I want to get to that in a minute, but let's give one high level question. PIA does this survey of agents every year, and I looked back at it, and in 2021, so we're going back in time, just 12% of agents said they were using AI in any form. And right before everybody joined this call, we were having a bit of a conversation, a preview that how quickly this stuff changes. So if you guys were to look out at your industry, do you think that number has gone up? Do you think it's gone up significantly or not? And if not, why not? What do you think are some of the challenges? So that's like a three-parter question, and you can answer any part of it. But Shah, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think, 2021, that's a long time ago, and a lot changes in technology, certainly. Is that number increased? Absolutely. I think there's still that piece of the AI is more now than what early adopters are, and hey, I want to be on the cutting edge of this. We see it really kind of everywhere, and so I think it's important for us as an industry that we're reviewing this and looking this and frankly embracing this, right? We go back to, Mark talked about the clapper, right? He probably remembers a fax machine, and when people said, oh, the fax machine's going away, the world's ending. Well, it didn't end, and there's advances in this technology when we're embracing it.
Mm-hmm. So Vonda and Mark, what do you guys think? I mean, obviously, yes, it's probably grown. Is it continuing to grow exponentially? And what do you think some of the challenges are?
I would agree with the exponentially part of it because, every day I log into my computer to something different, whether Bing had it, now Google has it embedded in their web browser. Right now, we were just looking at yesterday that our Adobe has now a chat feature, not a AI feature in it to analyze documents. So we were pushing in their insurance policy. It says, can you give me some highlights on these type of coverage in this insurance policy? And do a nice little summary of it. Now we have to always verify it because we just want to make sure that's accurate until it gets proven more. We got to share information with clients as well. But imagine having a multi-100-page policy to look at. Say, can you find this information? Can you give me interpretation on it? It's amazing what it can do. Again, I'll go back to the legal side. I know Lauren's on the line from our PA attorney, but yeah, it's going to create some issues there too.
Because some of the risks. Yeah. So
Definitely.
Vonda, you have something to add? And I'm curious about also, how do you keep up? I mean, Mark talked about going in and seeing 10 changes from yesterday. So how do you do that?
I don't think you can keep up. That's the challenge, is there's so much out there and it's changing. We talked earlier about, before we got online, about how the same program 6 months ago has improved so much now, and it'll just continue to improve. And I think the challenge is not necessarily to try to keep up with it, because I think if you try to keep up with it for the sake of keeping up with it, you're going to be extremely frustrated. You're going to be overwhelmed and probably broke. But I do think we need to stay on top of where it's headed and what it can do. The biggest thing is, like Mark said, it's got limitations. And even though it is so cool, you have to really take that with a grain of salt and know that what you're getting may not be accurate, and you have to go in and do the work yourself, as far as making sure that the product that you got is sound. But yeah, it's going to continue to improve. And I think the speed at which it improves is just going to increase.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a little gimmicky, but look, why don't we just talk a little bit about what we were talking about before we jumped on? We were talking about headshots, right? Mark, you want to tell a little bit? Vonda, you want to share?
Yeah. So when Claire met last month in Florida, she said about we need to get my headshot upgraded. So if you notice, the headshot today presentation was me from like 10 years ago. So there's now an AI that actually give it 10 pictures of yourself and it'll compose a new headshot for you, and then it'll put you in different situations. So if you want to be, well, last couple of weeks ago, I said we were watching the Super Bowl. So who team do I want to cheer for? I said, well, can you put me in a Chiefs jersey? Can you put me in a San Francisco jersey? And all of a sudden, there's these pictures of me in these different uniforms and outfits, and different people in the pictures as well. You really don't know what you're going to be able to believe in the future because, yeah, I showed that same picture to my daughter-in-law, and she says, boy, that doesn't quite look like you because your teeth are too straight in an AI photo. It's like, wow, sorry.
And Vonda, you have some experience with it too, right?
Well, yeah, I had done it like back in September, and the pictures really weren't that good. It could produce them, but it was like, these are really crazy. Well, I just did it again recently, and I actually uploaded more pictures, and I for this, mean, I think the same charge as I did last September, I got 200. And then there was actually some that were really good that I thought were really good, and some that were terrible. You know, you have to look and like the collars aren't lined up, or, you know, there's something very strange about there, you know, there's a detail, you know, so you really have to kind of look at it and make sure that there's not something strange going on with it. But just it amazes me how much it improved in just since September till now, to where it's actually pretty much a viable program. Whereas before, it was more of
I
a-
noticed when I shared mine to social media that Shaw and Vaughn are very critical because they noticed all of a sudden I had these weird hands. It looked like I had toes at the end of my hands and they didn't have the right number of fingers or whatever. But how many people commented on that post that didn't even notice that that was part of the issue with, and that really wasn't the true me, it was an AI me.
That's funny. So two things I want to say. One is, if you're not on mute, just reminder to the group to put yourselves on mute so we can all hear the discussion. Secondly, I have a whole list of questions and I'm going to keep asking these guys questions and we can keep going that way. But if you have any questions or comments or a story you want to share, pop it in the chat. And we would love to hear it, and I would love to share it. We love it when we get interaction with this group. So and maybe somebody will get the ball rolling and go ahead and do that. And if you want to just raise your hand and ask it live, again, we love that too. But let's talk about ChatGPT, because a couple of you mentioned ChatGPT. I'd love to hear how you're using it in your agency or how you want to use it in your agency. Who wants, Shah? You want to start, or?
Yeah, we use it for some marketing pieces. Retention is a big thing. I think we're all feeling like we're playing a lot of defense in the industry right now. And so we use that quite a bit with our retention communications and as well as some marketing communications. How we would like to see it internally, you know, I think we're a little bit nervous having some of these bots external facing, but we could really see some uses to use it internally where we're loading carrier appetites and underwriting guidelines and employee manuals and these types of things where, you know, internally an agent could say, hey, I'm looking to write a cabin in an unprotected area with, you know, they raise bears in the backyard. Like nobody wants that risk, but maybe somebody does. And when it's scrubbing that data, it can help us maybe a little more internally. That's how we could see that helping us.
Mm-hmm. Vonda?
I agree with that. I have a great frustration of trying to find out anything. If it takes me longer than 5 minutes, I'm frustrated. To me, I see that as being a tool that we can use to be able to, like he mentioned, our employee manual. We created a chat bot to try to help with our training because we had onboarded a very large number of people in the last 14 months. And so I created a chat bot where they could go in and interact with it. The challenge is loading the information with anticipating what they're going to ask. And they're asking it questions that I didn't anticipate that they would
I'm on
ask.
a video talk about
And
that.
so
Hold up for 1 second. Madeline,
Okay.
can you grab that? Got it? Okay, go ahead.
but you know, I didn't anticipate what they would ask. So trying to make sure I have documents that it can it can go through and answer. So we're playing back and forth with that. Also you know, like Shaw mentioned, the underwriting appetite, I think is a huge, huge area that we can work with it. I was working on one of those as well. I called it the underwriter assistant. I had issues with, you know, it's just like anything. I think the technology out there is being advertised as a little bit easier than it really is. There's a lot of work that goes into tweaking it and teaching it and verifying it and all the stuff that comes with that. And so it's a little bit more complicated than I think people realize going into it. So I think you have to be very cautious about that.
Mm-hmm. Mark, are you using ChatGPT?
Quite a bit every day. So we're applying to an email or doing a marketing piece or just through some thoughts. Recently just started, we have a position in our office. So we put in the chat, here's what this position looks like for receptionist. So we're very extensive on what we put in there, because sometimes you put in not enough, you get kind of wild results, but we've had the more information you give it, the more defined it gets. So then we get a response back. So, well, here's the characteristic person you want. Here's kind of the job description for this position. Here's how to advertise for it or whatever. It's very nice to kind of get that guideline. We added a few more tweaks to it, of course, but that'll be our template going forward for just something that's really not insurance, but just every employer has that same issue for a position in a business.
Mhm.
I liked how earlier Mark said something about that, it's almost kind of replaced Googling something or using a thesaurus or a dictionary or whatever, Chat GTP, it's, how you have certain windows that you open every morning when you sit down at your laptop or your computer, your management system, your VoIP phone, you open all these windows. Well, Chat GTP is one of them that, you just have it open all day and you want to look something up or you want to know something or how to format something or give me an idea. Give me a word that means this. You can just go in there and refine your prompts until you get something. So I think it's just becoming that tool that just gets better and better. But again, you have to, like anything, it's just because it's online doesn't mean it's 100% accurate.
So a couple of questions there, and we're starting to get some questions that I want to go to in a minute. But do you guys, you self-professed geeks, are you the only ones who are opening up ChatGPT when you get into your office? Are your teams doing it? Are you having to do training for your teams? How does that work?
I think there always has to be someone that starts it first off, then we see how well it works for you, then others will adapt to it in the office as well. So again, I use it daily. Each day, more people in the office are using that for that helping hand. And I think eventually I'll do that same thing. But I do the tab as well. It opens up every day when I come to office, right, with everything else. Yep.
I saw you nodding.
Yeah, we have a number of agents that are using it. And I think Christy put this in the comments here about trusting this, right? And sometimes the data isn't accurate, and that is very true. So, does there need to be some guardrails in place for agents and CSRs and others to say, yeah, just type this in and then send it out? No, I think there still needs to be some education for everyone in using it, and not just a copy and paste, right? I think for us, it's more of, hey, I've got a difficult email I need to send to a client, or how do I have this conversation about this, or what are the differences between these two products? I think that's a great place to start, but you kind of need to know your stuff. You can't just copy and paste. That can get you in a pretty bad spot.
And I like the tone changer feature. So if it gives you something out that says, oh, make it more friendly or make it more stern. I think the funniest one the other day was, hey, can you make this like you're a pirate talking? So all of a sudden that email is like, you're talking like a pirate. It just can do so many weird things as well. So, and you can also do it if you have an English Spanglish type issue. They can make it a Spanglish email as well.
So, so you're using your data. So then the trust is, you already know it's right. And you're just asking for something to be shifted in terms of tone. That's interesting.
Yes.
There's a question in here about, is anybody using AI for rating for personal or commercial lines? Yes. How
Yes.
so, Vonda?
We are working on
Hold on 1 second. Let's see if we can mute ourselves.
we're working with a company that is doing rating using AI, where it's going into taking it from one program or one company and then putting it into the next companies. And we're working to where we're trying to take something that may have taken an hour and a half, 2 hours before to get it through so many companies down to between 5 and 15 minutes. So to me, that's a pain point that you're trying to solve, which to me is where you look for uses of any technology, not just AI. But if there's something that you can use that you can save time with your staff, then that's to me of value, and it helps them have ownership in it too, because they know that the end goal is going to be saving them a time as well.
Hey, Vonda, would you mind sharing the name of the company and maybe where you're located?
I am in Manhattan, Kansas, and the name of the company is Gaia.
So there's a question actually in here about prompting Chat GPT, and Vonda was specifically directed to you, but any one of you all can answer. Was there a learning curve for writing great prompts? You know, you've heard sort of it's not in the answer so much, it's in how you craft that prompt. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, there certainly is a learning curve, but I think there's a learning curve with everything. I mean, you think about, you know, your child saying, "Hey, I'm hungry," and then you say, "Well, what do you want?" "Well, I don't know." "Well, are you hungry for something salty?" "Well, no, I want something sweet." And that may be similar where you can prompt, but you kind of have to keep asking and directing maybe to get the result that you want. And remember, I think the difference between automation and AI is that the machine is learning, right? So the more prompts you give, the more it's learning, and it's really learning about you. And there's some scary parts to that too, make no mistake. But there is some prompting that needs to happen for you to get the answer that you request. Just like Mark talked about, you know, I want it to sound like a pirate. Well, you got to tell it that, otherwise it's not going to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I kind of like to go back to the underwriting question that she mentioned earlier. So we have a company out there that this is how simplified they've taken to the extreme. You put in your name and address, and it'll give you a home and auto quote instantly. It'll go back and look at, like, oh, the roof is 20 years old, so it doesn't qualify, or maybe you have a flat roof, it doesn't qualify, but the roof qualifies, and then it picks out your education, it brings in your cars, it brings in your liens and mortgages, and it does a really good job presenting a quote within just a couple minutes. And it's bindable. The client can just say, I want to buy the coverage. It'll cancel the policy that you currently have. It'll actually then send notification to your mortgagee and how you're going to pay for it as well. But just off a few questions, it just brings everything in. I just can't believe the technology is out there right now that this company is using.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So,
What company was that? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat?
Yeah, could you repeat, Mark, the name of the company that you're referencing?
That company has to be called Branch.
Branch. Okay. And that's, yeah, okay.
They're not in every state, but they're expanding, you know, and again, it's a tech company, so I don't know if, you know, how well it's going to work, but it happens. It can present a quote. I get then Claire the link today, and I give her a quote on her house within 2 minutes. Imagine that as an agent.
It's amazing what you can do with the data.
Right.
And those same things. And you guys are going to hear a variety of different companies. Obviously, PIA isn't endorsing any of these companies in any way. People are just sharing their own experiences. But let's talk about the cost, because there is a cost. You know, you've talked about sort of either the free or semi-free versions of a Chat GPT or other things. But if you're loading your documents in, there's a cost to that. There's a cost to using some of these other technologies and deciding on them. Vonda, do you have a point of view on that and how you think about it as an agent?
Yeah, I think the cost is, I think, pretty astounding. I mean, when you look at all of it, for us, and it kind of depends on how you are looking at implementing it. There are some people that are looking at implementing some of these technologies to save on staffing. We do that to a certain extent. We really are focused more when we bring these technologies in is not necessarily to not hire the staff, not to have the people in place, but it's to make them more productive so they can do more things. So, you know, maybe the end result is I would have hired more people, but I use the ones that I have to be more productive. But I think that the cost has to you have to balance the pain point for sure. You have to look at a pain point in your agency, just like you prospect a client. You know, if you're going to go prospect a client, you have a better chance of getting that client if you are identifying their pain point, and then you go in with that kind of a discussion. That's really how you need to look at technology within your own agency. And if you can solve a pain point with artificial intelligence or technology, then that's where you should be looking at spending your time and your money, because AI is improving every day. So the money you're spending on working with it now is really development money.
Watching a webinar on AI.
And so it can be very expensive, and you really have to weigh that with what you're getting out of it. because it can be very expensive, and you have to make sure that it's something that's going to work for you and that you're not just not paying for it because, oh, somebody else is doing this, so I have to go and subscribe to this right now. I have to do the paid version of this and the paid version of that, because I don't want to fall behind. And, that's not a great reason if you don't have a purpose for it.
Mark or Shad, do you want to comment on how you evaluate the cost? Yes, no?
Yeah, I think it is tricky, right? And I guess for me, there was a time, I think when I was young, where I just wanted the latest and greatest. I wanted the coolest gadget, right? And Vaughn and I tease each other, the favorite app on our phone is the settings app. We just love that, right? And I think as I've, maybe matured in my life, I guess more than anything, the beauty of technology for me is actually just to get out of the way, to let me do what I need to do, right? And I think in our world, it's now about developing and building relationships and frankly, selling insurance. That's how we're getting paid. We don't get paid if we have the coolest phone system or the latest laptop, right? Or those things. So we evaluate technology a little unique in the sense that it has to it's got to do its job, but then it's got to get out of the way for the humans to do their job. And that is for us building relationships and selling insurance.
Mark?
I see right now a lot of the AI stuff is free, Chatbot GPT is free, but there's always that opportunity going forward to buy the next greatest version for a fee per month. And that's where you kind of make your decision. Well, is that cost effective to do that, or are you satisfied with the free version? I imagine someday those free versions of all these things we're talking about will go away because they need to generate revenue as well. And but for now, we take a really good advantage of the free versions of this technology that we have.
And there's a lot of interest in some of you mentioned specifically what you're doing in the company's names, and I'm watching the chat and people are asking for that. So there seems to be great interest in this group of agents kind of sharing what works, because I imagine you guys try a lot of stuff that also might not work as well. And so there's time, opportunity cost, right, of investing in this stuff.
Absolutely. And I will be the first one to say that I will pay to play just to play. I don't always experiment with technology with the thought of what it's going to do for my agency. Sometimes I'm just curious. And I have like one of the new ones that came out was where it creates video generated by AI. And I was intrigued. So I started out with the free version, and then I went into the paid version. And it's a lot harder. It's more to me, that's more of a coding, which is exciting to me, but not everybody's going to like that. And so not everybody wants to get that down in the weeds, because not everybody wants to spend a Saturday afternoon, trying to figure out where to put the code in as far as when the animation is going to happen and things like that. So it is definitely not for everybody, and yet it markets it like it is. So you really have to be careful there. And I would tell people always try to play with the free versions before you try to invest in something more, because you can wipe out an entire day and not even know what happened.
So one of the things we looked at was, PI has the pillars of what it stands for. So we came back from PI and said, can you give me the 4 pillars for my insurance agency? So we gave the AI a really extensive list of what we stood for, we thought we stood for. And we say, can you develop 4 pillars for us? So next, up comes the 4 pillars, which would be care, protect, advocate, and educate. So that spells the word CAPE. So it's an interesting thing for insurance agents. We are kind of superheroes. But then, so now we have that idea. So now how do we get that on paper? Chatbot's not graphically. So then we take that same thing and we ship it off to Fiverr for less than $50. We now have an infographic of those. And we say, can you make an infographic, vertical, horizontal? And we turn around and say, now can you make this a video for ourselves as well? For another, $60, it's now a video. You can find it on our Facebook page about our 4 pillars, what we stand for. Something that took less than probably a half hour on my time, just because mainly was just reviewing it to do it, but it just happened. But it's something that a lot of agencies think about for years after years. Well, how do you develop what you stand for, your pillars? And this just spit it out just like that. We did some fine tuning, of course, but it's now part of our culture.
A great use case. Can I throw out one more, just like on something that's worked for me in prospecting, if anybody out there is prospecting, but there's a tool, it's an AI tool to plug in that connects into LinkedIn, and anyone that prospects on LinkedIn and communicates with insureds or prospects, you know, you always want to get the message in a way that resonates with that person, right? And what's the best way to communicate with them? And, you know, either written, in this case, a written format, but it's a really great tool. It's called Crystal Knows. And every time I'm on LinkedIn and I'm communicating with someone new, I'll pull up Crystal Knows and just click on the link, and it'll tell me ways to communicate better with that person, right? So, for example, if you're talking to a CEO of an organization, a lot of cases they want to be very direct, right? So you want to get straight to the point. And so I have a tendency as a salesperson to vomit from the mouth, right? Like every salesperson does. But it really keeps me directed. And I found since I've been using it that the communication threads with different types of people are just much more open to communicating in that format. And it's nothing more than this just new tool that I'm paying, like, I don't even know what I'm paying for it because it's invaluable, honestly. And I think when we talk about cost, you got to look at the opportunity cost lost by not engaging with the new technology, and what could I be doing better by kind of having a little bit more of an open mind to it, right? So that's my take, but it's called Crystal Knows.
Yeah, I think people have asked, and somebody put the link in the chat there. Is it communicating by title, like, hey, a CEO likes you to be more direct, or is it by the individual?
So the AI knows based on the communication threads and posts. It's looking at other things in the way that they format their own, you know, when you write your bio, right? Like it's going to know based on certain keywords and the way that those are put together, what kind of person by and large you are. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at mine. One of the first things you do in the free version is you go in and you kind of pull yourself up and you see what it says about yourself. And anybody that's ever done DISC or any of the, you know, Myers-Briggs or any of those that believes in that will tell you that there's a real science there. And I do believe that. And that's been my take on using that particular tool.
Well, if any of you are communicating with Mark, he likes it if you talk like a pirate. Just a joke. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about remember I asked you about the survey up front and only a small number of agents were using AI. How about bots? Because a couple of you have mentioned, you know, internal versus external and how you need to think about things. When that same survey, I don't have the exact number, but it was a very small number of agencies were using bots to communicate with the external world. You may be using bots internally. I don't know, but I would love to hear how you're thinking about that, as well as how you think about using it with a client or a prospect versus your teams. Shah, I see you nodding. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, bots make me nervous. You may have seen, I think in the press recently, there was a gentleman who convinced a bot at the Chevy dealer, and correct me if I'm wrong, to sell him a car for $1. Did you guys see this?
Yep.
And so client-facing bots, frankly, make me a little bit nervous. And we have, you know, I think the conversation comes up, hey, do you use bots for communication or texting? And we use humans for texting. So we've sent our agency, we're sending approximately 180,000 texts a year. And if you have a teenager, that's just child's play. But for an agency, that's a big deal. I could see a situation where the bots could be very helpful in controlled circumstances after hours. When that client says, hey, I had an accident, can you send me my ID card? Or who do I call to make a payment? So for us, they make us a little nervous, client facing. And we know that there's a cost to that. We know that we have to pay humans to text, and that's, for us, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that brings in the trust factor when he talks about that. I'm in Kansas. We're a lot more rural. We're a lot more spread out. So I think that makes a difference in how I'm going to answer this. But I think there is a trust factor in the fact that I want to know if I'm interacting with a bot or if I'm interacting with a human. versus if my clients want to know if they're interacting with a bot or if they're interacting with a human. We do not have at this time ones that interact with our clients. We have ones that are, like I said earlier, the ones with our employees, but they know it's a bot. I mean, it's an Ask Willie. They're very aware of that. So I think the transparency part is important for us. And like he said, you know, the technology in the background, we're still having the humans develop these relationships because that's where that confidence and that trust comes from. So I think again that using the bots leads into a trust factor. And also those are getting better though. How many times have you gone on a support chat and you're getting a bot? And it used to be that I didn't even want to mess with those, but they're getting better. So now I'll at least try and say, hey, can you help resolve this? And then maybe it will and maybe it won't. I just changed payroll companies. And you'd think, as much as I love technology, that this would be an easy situation, and it's not. But I did work with the bot yesterday, and I got through a couple of things with the bot, and then I got to a point where I really needed somebody that could, that I could talk to. But those are getting better, and they will improve as well. But I also like it when I know that that's what I'm dealing with. My expectations are different.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of use a low tech version of not really a bot yet, but I would call it. So we have texting from our office phone number. So we have a texting program that we use. It's on our website. We do texting, but it's also integrated into our website. So someone actually can go on our website, start a conversation, but we have to actually answer that question. But we have staff that actually monitors that over the weekend and reply to the answers as well, which is kind of nice. But it's not automated, but it is a way to help the customers through some stuff on the weekends they possibly have questions on. So it's a real person, not a bot.
So what would it take? Because and I see a lot in the chat, and for any of you who are not following the chat, it's fabulous, Madeline. There's a lot of good stuff, so I hope we save it and we'll share it. What would it take for you guys to be more okay with it? I heard one of you, I think it was you, Vonda, in a previous discussion that, and you said it just now with the payroll, if the bot actually can give you the answer more quick, if you're transparent, but the bot can give you the answer more quickly than waiting for the human, there might be a value there that your clients would appreciate. So, how do you think about that? What would you like to see to make it, to say, all right, I'm willing to try this with my customers?
I have a thought. I think we need to make a distinction between a bot and a conversational AI tool. And what ChatGPT is at the top of a conversation is a conversational AI tool, as compared to a bot. Two very different things in my take. Conversational AIs can be trained to do some of the things that we're talking about here. And, as we progress further along through the evolution of large language models, I think that we'll see them get better, right? They'll actually talk to you with emotion, and they'll synonymize with you when maybe you have a claim. Hey, I've got a claim. What do I do? A tree fell on my house. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's take this step by step. You need to call the insurance company. Here's you need to take photos. Like, just some things that are just standard things that you can put out there with some conversational AIs that give you a different feel than a bot. And I think we have a stigma around bots, and over time we'll probably flush that out as we become more familiar with conversational AI.
Well, and I think too that the RPA, the robotic process automation, when people talk about those kinds of bots, they have programmed those to do certain procedures. And so there's some people that are using the bots in their management systems and things like that to process process renewals or to process downloads, things like that. And again, they're great. They're very expensive. And again, that's, if you're going to go into that, you have to know that you're going to spend possibly $10,000 to $20,000, depending on how large your database is. And they will get better and they will get cheaper, but and then if you make a change in your process and your procedure, then you have to reprogram that bot process. So there are, he's talking about conversational bots, and that is a little bit different than if you actually did create a bot to cover certain procedures. the RPAs.
And at that level, you're really thinking of the cost in terms of staff time or a partial staff person or something like that, as you indicated earlier. Anybody else want to talk about that in terms of how you're thinking about it or what it would take? I don't want to use the term bot. So I'll use the term big bot, a bot that does things. How you're thinking about it, what it would take, what you would want to see before you would take that risk to use it externally. More development. Okay, my panel is now quiet. That's not a good.
I think
I'll take
someone
this.
try and find a failure
Yeah.
Claire,
and then learn from it.
Yes.
Claire, this is John Doak. Just a question as a former regulator listening in. I think the discussion is pretty interesting as it ranges from a bot as all these clerical type situations that they're doing. But I think if you follow the NAIC H committee and some of the new state laws that are being passed in the big data group relative to bias in AI and some of the things that are happening there, I think it's relatively an interesting and really cutting edge space to be in, to be able to monitor, to see the uses of how AI can be transformed into handling more of these customer service issues or interacting with folks. So I'd be interested if there's companies out there that are, others are working with. But again, as I liken this to the days of when Uber showed up as a regulator, and a lot of us had to kind of scratch our heads and see, begin to work around that. But there's a lot of interesting discussions going on at the NAIC. And again, I'm a former regulator, not currently in office, but a lot of things to keep your arms around for this from a regulatory standpoint.
And I see a lot of the discussion, and I know, Lauren, you've been commenting on some of the things in here too, in the chat as well. So does anybody want to add something? It was John, right? John?
Correct. John Doak.
John. Yeah. Anybody want to add anything about how you think is anybody monitoring this stuff and looking at it and really paying attention to what the regulations are? I saw a lot in the chat about, copyrights and the data that comes in. And again, there's a difference if you're using the external data versus, applying it to your internal data for sure.
I think for
Mark,
us, oh, sorry,
Mark,
go ahead.
I would give you, Mark, sir, I'd give you a pitch up in Seward. Your current Nebraska insurance commissioner had a really good forum on AI last year at the Silicon Valley InsurTech, and I think he's planning more for this year as well.
Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to talk to him about this other technology we learned about recently. So there is now a virtual assistant that is actually an AI that actually can do outgoing calls. And they've been really clear because it's interested in a state. And the whole idea is it's going to get licensed to sell insurance. And recently they just clarified it's not licensed yet to sell insurance, but it has the ability and skill to pass state licensing. So how do you license this virtual AI that can actually make phone calls, take inbound calls, make underwriting decisions, bind coverage, that kind of stuff? And the technology is so amazing that it's just kind of blossoming, but they actually have it down where it can actually learn my voice. So you can actually get a call from me and I will start talking to you about insurance. Or maybe the example they gave in the demonstration was maybe a storm's coming and maybe the agency, or I just call all my friends and say, hey, just so you know, there's a hurricane coming. You need to start doing this, this, and this, protect this, and just kind of give them that little bit of advice to say, hey, get ready for this. And if you have an issue, have it happen. We had a tremendous storm here last year, and it'd been so cool if I had the ability to actually, through the AI, call all my clients, say, hey, did you have any storm damage? And tell me about it, and then get a summary put together and have it imported to the company for a claim processing. It's like, because it's consistent, it gathers a person's name, information with exact damages, and actually can refer back and forth for different issues. It's like, it's unbelievable. And you talked about the AI having that pause in there. So now what they do is they make it more like human speech, because you tell when AI is talking, there's a pause. Well, what do we do when we pause and we talk? We drop an A, or we just have another sound we make. Well, this AI now in those spots, when it's thinking, will drop those little A's in there, so it doesn't appear that it's an AI talking. It seems more like a natural speech.
Mark, are you talking about Lula?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but Mark, if you're talking about that, and to Vonda's point where the transparency of it, It sounds like in the example you're using, it's such a close imitation that the person doesn't know, or they do know.
Yeah. So I would believe that you should share that that's what it is.
Yeah.
And let people accept it, because people might not want to talk to it. But at the same time, it's like if it can make something happen more efficiently. And that's what the regulators are looking at. Do we need to disclose to people that we're using AI to answer these questions, or we're using AI to talk to you, or you're talking to a real person? But there's another online company you order stuff through, and I called the other day. It's like, I'm pretty sure I was not talking to a real person when I went through the process, but it never disclosed it. Would have been nice to know it, but I'm pretty sure it was, but I don't know.
Mark, I think you're actually correct. I can't imagine this going much further without the full disclosures relative to if you're actually talking to an agent or AI. But I think that's a natural progression of where this goes.
But I see someone comment, well, is this a E&O issue for an agency? Well, I don't know how well your staff works. I have a great staff, but at the same time, it's like, what is my staff's ability to answer a question accurately? Is AI that probably can answer 95% true higher than my staff can answer 80%? Which is the worst E&O question that you have? I think you probably will see the E&O market is going to have to advance as well to be able to offer new questions on your E&O certificate, to be able to understand who's actually answering questions and where that potential liability lies and what is actually behind the scenes. So that, in my opinion, just being a former regulator watching this, that part of the industry is evolving just as fast as the front end.
Mhm.
Shah.
We talked about this earlier about the fact that carriers are very involved and invested in this process, because of, how many times is it that we're all kind of on board together with our carriers because they're looking at this, and how to create processes on their end, and they're looking at how it's going to affect them, and regulation, I'm sure, and compliance plays into a big part for them. So it's on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll get back to Shah. Were you going to add some comments around this whole topic, Shah?
Yeah, I mean, we're towards the tail end here, and I think like any insurance professional, you always want to leave someone with a scary story and the sky is falling. There's some comments about outbound calls. Vonda shared this with me about the FCC regulating some of those outbound calls, mostly I think regards to political campaigns. Some of my fears and challenges on this is, and this is kind of in the chat a little bit too, is if the machine learning is trying to match the tone and the pace and the language, et cetera, of the caller or the person in the chat, we work with the public. So what happens when that client is aggressive towards maybe somebody of color or gender, or there's some religious or political overtones? Does the bot respond in kind, or does the bot ignore that? Does the bot shut that down? Does the bot feed into that? Those are some of the concerns that we have, that sometimes I think even still today, only a human can interact and react and process that appropriately. And you could see a situation that could get out of control really fast and could be very ugly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you train the bot? So I think the lesson here is monitoring the regulatory developments, monitoring the technology at the same time and its capabilities, and it's all changing literally at the speed of light, and making sure we're up to speed on that. Certainly it's a place where PIA can be helpful, as well as discussions like these. There were two topics that I wanted to touch on as we head into our last few minutes. Let's just talk quickly about the first one, which we talked a lot about different technologies and how they're useful within your agency, how you're thinking about how you pay for those things. Does that create turmoil among your staffs? Are they concerned that they're going to be replaced by some of these things? Are there things you're doing to have folks feeling okay about it, that maybe it can make their jobs easier? Just, quick answers on, how you think about that, how you talk about some of this stuff. Shah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think for us, the conversation we're having mostly are for simple tasks and for things that maybe are happening after hours. So I would like to think there's not maybe a concern for many internally, but maybe a way to help them be more efficient in what we're doing.
Mhm. Mark?
I,
Oh,
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So we have the issue as well. So I think the way we see it is there are certain things we want to get done that we're allowing this AI now to do. For example, I'm not in charge of the social media for our office, but somebody was. All of a sudden, we have a program now that you can go to a website, give them your website information, type in what your agency stands for, and it develops in 5 minutes 30 AI videos about the topic in your agency to post to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you want to do, YouTube, and just done. So you can do a whole month's worth of stuff in just 5 seconds. It takes, or 5 minutes, but it takes longer to then post to those websites is what takes time. Automatic goes out every day. And then if you want to change the topic, so right now in Nebraska, we're working on crop insurance. We use our website that when they get topics from is a crop insurance company website. So it pulls information from them, generates the videos. Now we have another set of 30 videos that we can now post to all those websites we just mentioned. And then we'll switch off maybe next month, we'll concentrate on life insurance, but it's just all those same things that would take an hour probably do one video with music and graphics to do, all done in just 5 minutes for 30. It's just amazing what it can do. Again, we still verify what we see before we end up posting it, but it's technology is crazy. I mean, we've been doing it now for the last few months, and it has really added content to our social media stuff. And it's not the happy, I hate insurance commercials. I hate what insurance talks about in their commercials. It doesn't have nothing to do with insurance. Ours are more engaging, 5 top things you need to worry about buying insurance or life insurance, those kind of need type things to generate conversations.
So in that case, it hasn't taken somebody's job. It's really kind of allowed you to play on a much bigger.
Well, because yeah, we never get the job accomplished because it just got too done, because one of the last things you do is those things, because you have your day-to-day, someone's gonna answer the phone when it rings.
Yep, got it.
too many balls in the air in the insurance independent space, right? So many balls. So my experience working with teams implementing AI has been, it's welcomed in the independent insurance agency world, right? Because so many people have so many things on their plates, because every insurance company does a little bit things. They do, some give downloads, some give emails, some send you a fax. It's like, there's so many things, and anything that we can do to promote some efficiency that helps them, if we can steer the conversation in that direction, it's been my experience that they welcome that change. If you present it as a, this is some new technology that, is taking over the world, there might be some fear that's going to take over the job. But if it's framed in the context of, this helps you do your job better, this makes you more efficient, this enables you to provide a better service to our clients, that's really the message.
Yep. Mark, somebody's asking in the chat about what program you're using for those videos, if you want to respond.
That one's called Promo.
Okay. Vonda, how are you thinking about it with your teams, with the 9 offices?
Well, I will tell you that in the beginning, there are some things that I made mistakes with when I would try to do adoption on something, and it created more work for them than saved. So I learned from that, and now we really look at it as something that can benefit them, that can help their productivity, that can take something off their plate, that can take time off their plate. When they can say, oh yeah, this saves me 45 minutes a day, that's something that they can monetize in their head. And so that part is critical. The other thing too is I have a core group of people that I usually roll out to first. And then once they kind of master it, then I'll start bringing other people on, like the quoting platform, because it was, had bugs to work out. So it gets frustrating. Any technology that doesn't work when you're trying to teach it something is frustrating. So you have to know who on your team can handle that to make it better. And then the rest of them, as it gets better, want to join in, and they have that, oh yeah, let me have a login. Let me try it. Let me do this. So you do have to kind of gauge it with your staff. And again, we're not using it to replace people at this point. We're using it to make them, to make their jobs better, to make them easier. And I think we also have a culture in our agency of looking towards the future and building towards the future. And they enjoy being able to help develop software and technology that will help other people in the industry. That gives them a very much, very intrinsic value that you can't, get in other ways. But again, it's a culture that you build. The other thing that we really haven't talked about, and I think it's because Shaw was sitting next to me so I could hit him in Florida when he mentioned the age thing. But you know, there is this concept that the technology is for the younger people. I would like to, you know, say that that's not true, but it really is. But there are exceptions. But I do think that it's important to keep looking at these technologies. And that is one way that you will be able to engage that next generation into your agency by having tools that make their lives easier. They expect it. Most of them, you know, have the way they do business in the world around them. And if their workspace isn't matching that, then it's going to be a source of concern for them. So I think that is one, you know, for the people that are trying to bring those younger people into your agency, looking at different tools of productivity, and AI is included in that, will help you not only attract but retain people like that.
Excellent. And we're going to stop on that. Vonda, if you had timed that perfectly, it's exactly noon. So I know we have questions we didn't get to, so that means there's going to be a part 2. This was a fabulous discussion, everybody. Appreciate everybody's input in this. Appreciate our panelists. You did a great job. So thank you very much. Madeline, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Claire, and thank you to our esteemed panel. Again, we have recorded this session and we will be circulating, so feel free to share that with your staff. Any questions you can direct our way and we'll try to wrap those up. So thanks again for being here. We will see you next month. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.